On February 12th of this year, I actually released a video on Ruby Franke. The first half of the video concerned her and her, frankly, flat-out abusive parenting practices. You know, not only just the whole act of recording every single moment of your child's lives, uploading it to the internet for everyone to see. That goes for all family channels. But she ruled the whole household, her own husband, and her own 6 kids with the most narcissistic, insufferable, completely bonkers shit iron alloy fist. Her own 6 little kids, the oldest being 12 and the youngest probably not even being a year old, were definitely unpaid full-time actors in Ruby's stupid little 8 passengers, strict Christian Mormon TV show. Completely written, produced, directed by her, both the show and her kids. But in the second half of the video, I did mention someone named Jodi Hildebrandt. This was about a year into after Ruby quit 8 Passengers because, her family was falling apart at that time. All her kids wanted nothing to do with her. But even still, she wasn't done with being a parent. So she became the second in command to Jodi Hildebrandt's entire parenting thing called ConneXions. Okay, look, I tried going into ConneXions' website. It was just complete nonsense. A bit of learning about business here, a lot of learning about teaching here, a lot of learning about relationships in the psycho-meta spiritual sense or some bullshit like that. But again, her Instagram and Facebook posts regarding ConneXions were all about parenting. I label both Ruby and Jodi as being complete narcissists, completely abusive, and not caring what happens to anyone else under their thumbs. As long as people, praise them, give them money, give them a platform to speak their mind on whatever bullshit just magically springs to their mind and label it as the truth. One of those people who just says it like it is, which pretty much means speaking from their mind without doing any kind of research whatsoever. Even back then, Ruby, Jodi, and ConneXions were getting clowned mercilessly in the comments. Every single video was just instantly disliked. And I thought things would just stay that way because it wasn't like, Ruby and Jodi were a part of some kind of murder cult or anything. So that video was posted on February 12th, or on February 11th in Utah time. I honestly thought I was late to the party on that video, because the video was made a full year after Ruby Franke left 8 Passengers and joined ConneXions. But as it turns out, just nearly 7 months after I posted the video, on August 31st, or August 30th in Utah time, both Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrandt did get arrested for child abuse, but it wasn't just mental abuse, which I suspected from the start. It was also physical abuse. Fair warning, what I'm about to describe here consists of actual physical abuse. So if you're squeamish about hearing the details of kids getting abused, then you might want to click forward to this timestamp right here. Okay? Good. So this whole incident did not happen in Franke's home. It happened in Hildebrandt's home. I think Ruby Franke's ex lives in her old home. I'm not sure. Well, either way, it doesn't matter if Ruby Franke has the old house or not. She was at Jodi Hildebrandt's house when both her and Hildebrandt were arrested. So while Franke and Hildebrandt were in Hildebrandt's house doing who knows what, the oldest of the 2 or 3 kids, some reports say 2, some reports say 3, I know it was at least 2, had to climb out of a window when neither Franke nor Hildebrandt were looking and run straight to a neighbour's house and beg for food and water. The neighbour found that the kid had deep lacerations around his wrists and ankles from being tied up with something, probably a rope. So the neighbour of Hildebrandt, obviously from seeing a starving, parched child with injuries around both his wrists and ankles, had to call the cops. Now, if you thought the descriptions were bad, just check out the 911 call that the neighbour made. He was pretty much in tears just describing this child that turned up at his door. I mean, what would you do if a starving, parched child with blood around his wrists and ankles just magically turned up on your doorstep one day?
I just had a 12-year-old boy show up here at my front door asking for help. And he's said he just came from a neighbor's house, and we know there's been problems at this neighbor's house. He's emaciated, he's got tape around his legs, hungry and he's thirsty. How did you get out of the house?
Porch. He went out.
He says you just left through the porch at the neighbor's house. Her name is Jodi Hildebrandt. I don't think he needs an ambulance. I'll let the cops decide that, but his ankles are taped up and he won't tell us why.
Okay.
But he has duct taped around each ankle. Yeah, there's sores around them. I think there's a good chance he's been...
He also said...
Oh, and he has them around his ankles. I mean, his wrists as well. Okay, this boy has been... And he's... This kid has obviously been... I think he's been detained. He's obviously covered in wounds.
Now, the police are used to dealing with domestic disturbance calls all the time, but I imagine this did not sound like a domestic disturbance call at all. It wasn't about, oh, my child ran away, or my husband is being angry with me. You know, those sorts of confusing situations where people close to you are acting strangely. You know, this was definitely an odd case of some kid randomly turning up on someone's doorstep that was probably worth checking out. I'm not sure what happened exactly after that. Remember, I assume the police turned up at the neighbour's house. They probably questioned the kid a bit, and then went to arrest Franke and Hildebrandt. It's just a guess at this point, but I don't think we really need to see the body cam of the starving kid with lacerations around his wrists and ankles. What happened there is that there was somehow enough evidence for Utah police, of all police forces, to arrest two influential Mormon, influencers? You think these people will get away scot-free because they're spreading the good word of the Mormon church to everyone across the world, but no. I don't think the police cared at this particular point. Even if the kid was the child of Jesus himself, all they saw was this poor, starving kid. Either way, the other kid found at the Hildebrandt house was also found to be malnourished. Yet, from two people whose job it is to teach others about parenting, two of the kids were found to be malnourished, and two, I guess, were just found abandoned at another house. I'm just going to rehash a couple points I made in my previous video about Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrandt. The one I made a couple months before they got arrested. Ruby already had a bunch of negative attention before she got arrested. In fact, she pretty much abandoned the whole 8 Passengers channel a whole year after I made that first video. Out of the usual crop of standard happy-go-lucky, everybody loves everybody, pure, wholesome Christian family channel, the 8 Passengers household was oddly strict and not happy at all. It wasn't about raising the kids to be, successful in their careers, successful in some sort of creative endeavor. The Franke household wasn't like, scientists or artists or anything. There really wasn't a pressure on the Franke children to be, topping the class, getting straight A's and everything, being amazing musicians or, hell, even being amazing at anything. It was about being strict, being self-sufficient, without giving a reason why. Or hell, not even giving the kids a chance to be, self-sufficient or independent, because they had like cameras shoved in their faces 24/7. They had a very strict no internet, no social media, despite the fact they had cameras shoved in their faces all the time, and the whole 8 Passengers experience felt like some kind of weird sci-fi TV show, where scientists were experimenting on a bunch of kids they kidnapped. Just to see what happens if they did this, maybe if they did that. What happens if I don't feed my kids? What happens if my kids don't get any Christmas presents this one year? Ruby Franke had no idea of how to be a parent. She could never learn from past experience, couldn't learn from the present, couldn't learn for what could possibly happen in the future. And this is where Jodi Hildebrandt comes in. Now, I have absolutely zero idea of how long Franke and Hildebrandt go back. But Hildebrandt's entire parenting course sort of seemed to be, and this is me trying to decipher all the gobbledygook that she just shat out all over her page, seemed to be about teaching parents how to force their kids to obey them and become the happy, positive, obedient, strictly G-rated kids and household they were promised when they were growing up Mormon. At least that was the hook, line, and sinker that Hildebrandt used to get parents to pay for her courses. Hildebrandt was all about driving fear into her customers. She put clear stamps on anything sort of ambiguous, or perhaps theoretical, on something like, child psychology, and tell them things like, this was specifically designed to confuse you, and these are just all evil human emotions, and the only way to decipher fiction from reality is by listening to me. I mean, she even had an entire podcast with Franke called Mums of Truth. Jodi Hildebrandt's whole ConneXions thing was just a strict black and white, this is truth, this is not the truth. There was no how to prepare for bad situations. There was nothing theoretical at all about ConneXions. Hildebrandt was one of those I have all the answers type of gurus. They had all the answers to the world except for the questions of how to not beg your customers for more money, or even why my psychiatry license got suspended. Yeah, Hildebrandt was controversial before then. I mean, JodiHildebrandt.com wasn't even owned by her. It was all negative testimonials from some of her previous clients about how she just do a whole bunch of weird random stuff and pass off her own bullshit as, I'm a professional, I know what I'm doing. But back then, I thought Ruby was just, trying to be a parent, but was just completely misguided in her conservative Mormon beliefs, and expected her kids to be strong, faithful, conservative Mormons just like her and her husband. But no, it seems that she now hates kids so much, her own kids, and she just seems so done with the whole parenting thing, even though it's the only job she's ever had, and probably has zero qualifications for anything else. That she just neglects her kids, throws them in a room, and ties them up to get them to shut up if they, so much as ask for food to stay alive. It's like she'd much rather be an influencer with Jodi and use the ConneXions platform to talk about random crap that has nothing to do with parenting. So here's the arrest warrant for just Ruby Franke. I couldn't find the initial arrest warrant on Jodi Hildebrandt, but I imagine it looks very similar to Franke's. Especially because since, they were both arrested at the same time, both charged with 6 counts of felony child abuse. And the kicker is, both are held without bond. Yep, Franke and Hildebrandt are apparently so dangerous to society that Utah police have just decided to lock them up permanently until their trial starts. Maybe they could arrange bail later on, but right now, as of this video, Franke and Hildebrandt have been sitting inside a jail since, August. So it was late August they were arrested, so it's been nearly a month since they've been in prison. This is the first page, and it just lists out all the charges, which are, as you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 counts of felony child abuse. There's like 17 pages across the whole report. A lot of it is just boring legalese, which defines each term at least 5 separate times in 5 different ways. But this one goes into more detail of, what aggravated child abuse is in the state of Utah. Another page here details why they're charging Franke in the first place. And if you can read that, yep, I ain't lying. That is just how evil these two are. It isn't even worth debating if there's any good that can possibly come out of Ruby Franke. Because, honestly, what good in her soul would allow her child to be treated like that? And, forget just one, how about 6 whole children abused by Franke just to make $1 million off of? I'm honestly guessing, this is just a guess, but the main reason why both Ruby and Jodi were denied bond is so police could eventually obtain a warrant to go and search Jodi's house. Because on September 20th in Utah time, police did execute a search warrant on the Hildebrandt house. You might want to look away for the second page I'm about to reveal. Again, it contains more graphic descriptions of child abuse. Again, another little timestamp warning. We good? Okay. So a search warrant does confirm that it was Jodi who tied the children down with rope. And she must have tied around the knots and pulled on the child's arms and legs so tight that those ropes caused rope burns severe enough to cause a wound. And Jodi even went as far as to untie her rope and aggravate the wounds more by putting bloody fucking cayenne pepper on them. Like, mental health counselling? Parenting advice, anyone? Imagine hating children so much that you tie them up in a room and just abandon them. And while they're left in the room, like completely deprived of anything, no food, no water, no room to move, and it's just them like face down on the floor, tied up with their own little thoughts swirling around inside their heads, like slowly going insane, because like what else are you supposed to do when you're totally deprived of everything, including your own movement? And then you decide to come back and just pour pepper on the wounds that you caused them personally, all to a 12-year-old kid. Isn't this like shit you'd hear out of Guantanamo Bay? Except this time, it's all done to a 12-year-old kid. And what else did they find in Jodi's home? Well, they found pretty much everything the kid described. To the neighbour he ran to the police. Yep, there's a bunch of tape in Jodi's house. There's a bunch of rope in Jodi's house. Even fucking handcuffs. And a bowl containing a red liquid with a metal spoon. Just carefully laid out, carefully prepped. I don't have a full video of the initial court appearances of both Ruby and Jodi. The only videos that I could find were from news stations, so I'm guessing it was only news stations who had access to the video in the first place, and they just put their own overlays, their own commentary over it. But yeah, just look at their faces in their orange and white striped jumpsuits. But honestly, just look at the faces but between the both of them and notice the main disparity. Ruby looks pretty much emotionless, which is weird because it was her own kids that were being tied up, wounded and tortured. But it's Jodi, it's the one who's looking emotional. I wouldn't say emotional as in sad. I'm saying like emotion as in total panic. Because she's just lost her entire livelihood. She's going to prison for, who knows how long. And I bet you she knows that what she did was child abuse. Because there wasn't anything in any of her ConneXions classes that I found that involved tying your kids up in a basement and just leaving them there. The whole tying up and torturing little kids thing seemed to be a special parenting technique for Franke's kids only. And considering Hildebrandt's own history of leaving out facts that she snitches on her own patients to the Mormon church, like, what's described or not described in a website? Because again, the website just looks like it was ripped straight from the packaging of toilet paper or some kind of alcohol-free butt wipe. Jodi's actual therapy, life coaching and parenting techniques, well, who knows? There's certainly no joy in them. No empowering, just one crazy lady acting out her abuse fantasies on unsuspecting Mormons. So according to this lawyer who's based in Salt Lake City, second-degree child abuse, which is what Franke has been charged with 6 times, and Hildebrandt as well, carries a maximum penalty of 15 years. 15 times 6 is 90. Now that's the maximum, and the maximum really only applies if you've been charged with that offence prior, you have like a criminal history, which Franke doesn't have. But Hildebrandt might have a criminal history. Again, her license was suspended, and she was put on probation for about 18 months. Whether it's just a strictly legal thing which carries no criminal penalty, look, I don't know. So unless Hildebrandt makes a deal with prosecutors, I bet you she's going to get a much longer prison sentence than Ruby Franke. Which is fine by me. Well, as long as Ruby is never out of prison until her youngest child turns 18. Look, even if those children are sent off to a foster home and are with like shitty abusive foster parents, at least their lives aren't being recorded for our pleasure and their parents' money. And also, let the story of Franke and Hildebrandt be a warning to you, just in case you accidentally stumble across something new and alternative that doesn't do what everyone else is doing. Just take a look at their main website. If they don't even describe what their business is, or don't describe anything they do, they don't really have a business that provides a service. They don't know what the fuck they're doing. They have zero faith in the actual product of what they're selling, if they can't even describe the bloody product in the first place. Any use of a thesaurus? Run.